last month, Kevin did an awesome thing for us and did a whole walkthrough on how people can create custom content using the template. And then I failed to notice that had happened before that video expired without me downloading it. So today, Ryan is going to do us the enormous favor of walking through all of that again and showing us how we can use the awesome template that we've made available on GitHub to create custom content. And by we, I mean you, because I want all of you to create custom game content and then show it to me. I'm very excited. Ryan, are you ready? Cool. All right, so what we're looking at is, of course, the freely available TwilioQuest extension template that anybody can clone and get started with. Are we starting with square one?
We're starting with square one, yeah, from humble beginnings. Yeah, so this is our public TwilioQuest GitHub organization. We have some internal content too that we're publishing here. So like all of the content in TwilioQuest will live on this site. So the first thing we do when we head to this extension template is we use this nice big green use this template feature. I'm going to use it.
Shiny candy-like button. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Demo TQ extension. It's a great name.
I'm very
it's a demo.
into accuracy in naming.
We go ahead and hit the next big green candy button, create the repository. And now I wait. GitHub has this nice use as template feature, which just copies everything that was in that project and puts it into my own GitHub. If you wanted to, for whatever reason, you could download all that code as a zip file and use it the same way we're going to, but Git's pretty good to use. So I recommend using the Git.
I'm a fan of the Git. Mm-hmm.
We're going to clone that down. I'm going to skip explaining Git. If you're unfamiliar, that's a whole separate lesson that we would need to cover. Great. So you'll want to have a folder on your computer where you can clone this project into. I've created a new TQ extension demo folder. And so this.
Can you make it a little bigger?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this is just an empty folder, and I will go ahead and clone the repository that I just, I will authenticate as myself. I will mistype my password because I'm talking. I will now clone the repo. Okay, great. Great, so now we have this folder that corresponds to the name of my TwilioQuest extension. I'm going to go ahead and open up this folder in code so that we can take a peek at the contents of that. How about I load this up into TwilioQuest and then we see with our eyeballs the added mission, and then we can talk about what corresponds to what bit, if that works.
Yes.
Okay. But so TwilioQuest, the TwilioQuest launcher, there's this little more button here right below the big Play TwilioQuest button. And if you click that, you'll get these drop downs, and you can change the release channel to TQ 3.2 preview. And that will download the latest build of TwilioQuest with all of the authoring tools content and Carrie's new art and everything that we're looking forward to promoting up to the main branch. So I'm downloading that right now.
You can be on the TwilioQuest cutting edge.
The cutting edge, yeah. And now I will launch, and I will zoom this back in now. I should have Jira open when I do this because I always want to add a ticket to fix the hotkey here, and then I never remember because I'm in the middle of a stream when I do it. Okay, let's see how this. Okay, there's a TwilioQuest. Is that a TwilioQuest?
That is a TwilioQuest.
So this is the new 3.2 branch. If you haven't seen it, there's a lot of new redone artwork. Carrie is amazing. And the first thing we're going to need to do in order to start working with extensions is to head to the settings icon, number 3 on the top. And we're going to head over to the extensions tab on the left here. And I already had it enabled, so I'm going to disable it real quick. And so there'll be a nice bit of information that lets you know, like, if you install an extension from someone else, you're installing code that's going to execute arbitrary things on your computer. So only reload extensions people you trust. But then you hit this big old enable extensions button. And then the next thing we want to do is choose a directory that corresponds to the, I'm just going to do that over to the side since this shows most of my computer. So we'll see the path right here, actually. So I picked the TQ extension demo folder path that I was showing in the terminal earlier. And so this is the root path, not the individual extension, because you can load as many extensions as you want. And we have saved. I'm going to restart because I can't remember if I need to restart. And for the sake of this demo, I will just restart. Look at that. Look at that magnified zoom. Oh, goodness. I'm going back into the same release branch here, and everything is very magnified. Okay, but now we should. The problem with when I do this is I never know if I have loaded the old extension or if I have loaded the new extension. So I'm pretty sure now we will have loaded the new extension. Great. Okay, so this is the VR template mission that we're pulling in from the extension folder.
This is what it will look like if you just clone it off of GitHub to run around in.
Yes, if you do everything I just did, you should end up in exactly this state. So we'll launch in, and we get this new little green VR. Yeah, green VR demo. There's some objectives. We've got the laser barrier, all that kind of stuff.
Very Lawnmower Man, very Tron, very 90s VR.
We have loaded the extension. We've got it loaded up in TwilioQuest. We're running it. In TwilioQuest, and we've seen everything from the demo. So the next bit to kind of go into is how we're going to modify this. We're going to look at the source code and what all the different parts mean, and then work with changing that stuff. So we're going to go. The first little entry point into a new level is this level JSON file, and I'll just close the file extension because or the file picker because of space real estate here. But we see there's this the VR vision template, the description that we read earlier. So if we wanted to change the name of this template mission, we could say TQ Tuesday demo extension, or demo level would be a more accurate name. And then if we were to, and I'm just going to continue quitting all the way out of TwilioQuest and back in to try to make this as smooth as possible. There are most places should not require a restart, but for the sake of this demo, I'm not going to find that out. Yeah.
We've only got an hour today, so too much guess and check could derail us a bit.
Yes, that's kind of where I was thinking. And so we can see we have the TQ Tuesday demo level. And so that's sort of like the most basic paradigm here. We have a bunch of data files, you modify them, you reload them into TwilioQuest, things are different.
Wait, so if I wanted to change, obviously I could change the name like you just did. I could change the description. I could change the mission icon. So if I wanted it to be something other than the green flag, and where would I want to put that? Where's the mission icon that I could put a new one in?
I think mission icons live in this default folder right now. I'm not sure. I'm honestly not sure if you can change it right now.
Lols, my bad.
So one of the great things about TwilioQuest is there's so many different things you can change, and one of the bad things about a TwilioQuest extension is there's so many things you can change. And as I was prepping my notes, I didn't think about mission icon at all. But this is a great point. This is a great segue into bringing up the docs repo. So the mission icon isn't in the docs repo, but we've been working on this docs repo that has a lot of guides on how to get started with TwilioQuest. We talk about how extensions are loaded. We have bullet points in here about creating new levels, maps, objectives, non-player characters.
So if you wanted to do something like change the icon and you couldn't find a way to do that in the docs, you would jump over to community.twilio.com/TwilioQuest and you would drop us that information. We have an entire section in the forums that is just for people that are content authoring, because we are so excited for our community to embrace this very new part of TwilioQuest. So by all means, if you want to do something in the TwilioQuest authoring and you can't find it in the documentation, hop over the community forums and let us know that. We are so excited to hear about stuff like that.
Yes. Yeah. Love making the tools more clearly documented and more powerful. So
yes.
Any requests like that. And even if you find something in here, there's a solid chance that we can improve the documentation experience for what's already covered.
Yeah.
So definitely let us know. And this repository is also open source at the same TwilioQuest project here.
So pull request welcome.
Pull request welcome, yeah. So typos, coverage, whatever, definitely let us know. So one thing that I did intend to cover was map editing. So I know map editing works. So let's take a look at the map editing. We had this default level JSON file that we looked at, but there's also some other directories here. So maps and objectives are two other big ones. We're going to dive into the maps section. And I didn't remember to open tiled and scale it up, because I think tiled is the biggest offender of being bad at scaling, unfortunately. There's so many windows and they all scale individually, I believe.
Just to give a rough orientation for folks. So this is the tiled UI. And so the center part is, of course, the visual of the map. The upper right-hand side is where you can select which level that you're working on, because if you've ever worked with like Photoshop or the GIMP or anything, you know that like when you're working on these images, they are actually layers of images on top of each other. And so you can select which layer you're working on in the upper right. In the lower right, those are the actually like stamps of many images that you can use to create your map. And then that left side panel is actually what you will make adjustments to for the game to programmatically interact with. So like if you are giving something like if you're attaching something to an objective, you will put that information into that left side panel. Was that vaguely correct for you, Ryan?
Yes, no, that was very correct. You got them. I think what we might do first is just do some of those different modifications to kind of show them off. And so one of the easiest things you can start with is just kind of changing the tile map. And I'm looking for a nice just obnoxiously bright red. And I'm gonna draw some nice red all over this this cool green area. And so what we should see now is once we, and we can actually, I'm going to give this a shot of not reloading, but I can't, yeah, okay. I knew better.
That'll teach you.
I knew better. So I will go back. No, I don't speak Japanese. Great, so when we load back in, we should see the modified tile map here.
Well, not here, but when we load into the new level.
Yes, very true. Good call. We don't. So
did you save in tiled? Because tiled does require you to save.
Tiled does require you to save. I didn't, but you know what? I know what's happening now is that I have the other version. I didn't actually go into tiled and open the new thing that I just cloned. So when I started this morning, I downloaded a whole new extension, and I moved these over to the last time, and then just totally did it this time.
So be sure to be editing the default.json that you are actually loading into your extension.
Yes. That is just a good tip, especially if you're working with any like multiple extensions.
Yep. Just remember that everything starts out named the exact same way. So as you are moving forward, it's super important to like give things descriptive names. Just like in all coding, it's very important to give things descriptive names.
Okay, well now I want to know. See, okay, I thought it was supposed to work, and it did work. I just was wrong in a different way. Differently wrong. But great, yeah. So you can see, similar to a paint program, you can draw on these things, but there's a lot more different shapes and such that you can draw with.
All right, so on this map, there are already examples of the two kinds of objectives that the objective objects that you can use when you're making your custom level. There's the laser barrier gate, and that's a great way to create a series of objectives where one of them relies on others as a prerequisite, because of course that laser barrier can be blocking later on missions. And then there's the treasure chest, and treasure chests can be linked to objectives that you don't actually necessarily need to complete in order to do future things, and you don't necessarily have needed to do past things. They're like optional objectives. So that's like you can mix and match those two styles of objectives in order to create the experience that you're looking for.
Yeah. So let's take a peek at. So this is what an example objective looks like. We prompt for information. We provide very little in this Zoom level, but we provide description of what the person needs to accomplish. They have a title, and so we can go. I think the next step would be to look at the files that are generating this, and then modify them for our own usage.
Yes, excellent.
So let's look at example objective. So we find inside of the root level objectives here in our mission or our level, we can find our objectives in the same way that we had. In the same way we had a level JSON file, we have a objective JSON file, and then changing title, similar demo. We can change it. And then this file also explains, like, here are the types of input we're asking for. Maybe if I make that smaller, it just explains how much XP we want to reward people, which gives us a description. And then we also have these markdown files that describe all of the
content
help text
panels.
Content. Yeah. Content is a good summary word for all of the things that your player needs to get through. And then, as you can kind of tell here, you can get a little wild with HTML and stuff if you would like, style things, whatever.
So just a
that's
good
not
rule of
required.
thumb when you're making your objectives is the overview is exactly what it sounds like. It should be very short, very sweet, to the point. These are the points you will earn. This is a one-liner description. And the objective is more like a summary of the different pieces that you might need to do in order to complete the objective. With, like, we like to put like a nice little like checklist at the top that for people that are just trying to like skim and get to the point immediately. And then the help tab is where you'll want to put like your deep dive explanation, because the thing about TwilioQuest is we never want to assume the background experience that somebody is approaching this with. We like to assume that every single human being that comes into it could have any of a variety of backgrounds. And so we want to make sure that wherever you're starting from, the help panel gives you all the information that you need. And we do that by linking out to third-party resources. Highly recommend that is the approach that you take, because the thing is, you might like love what you're teaching so much that you could write in every step-by-step prose that you need right now. But if you want this to be a good learning resource in the long term, then what's way more useful is to link out to third-party resources that are going to be kept up to date and are going to equip people with awesome third-party resources that they can use, not just to complete this mission, but like forever and ever in the future. Like when I was doing the PHP missions, I linked out to all of the PHP sites that are most useful to me when I'm actually doing like PHP development for the monies, because that is going to equip people not just in the moment, but throughout their developer journey. So highly recommend that be the approach that you take when you're designing these 3 panels.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Big +1 on the external linking for valuable resources. Looking through docs and learning the ecosystem's documentation is a very important part of learning, and that's the great way to do it. Also, just if you write an entire high-quality blog post inside of a TwilioQuest objective, it makes a lot of sense to share that publicly outside of TwilioQuest too, and then maybe link out to that.
Yeah. If you want to do that, like, let us know. Like, post it to the forums, or let us know it should be a blog post. We could hook you up with a Twilio Voices program. Like, if you want to write deep dive prose, there are places for that outside of TwilioQuest too. So like, you can be a game content author and like a help file author. Like, we can hook you up. All the content you want to make, there's a right place for that.
We even have guides in the TwilioQuest docs too. So there's no shortage of places that we can try to help put your content in front of more eyeballs. Yeah, but yeah, so that was a solid, great overview of the purpose of sort of organizing these objectives, different text blocks. I am not going to try to write those right now because
that would be a bit much. Mm-hmm.
It's a lot. It's a lot to create these. But what we can look at is the validation code real quick behind what happens when I click hack here. And so I guess the validation code right now will hang if I do not input values. So let's go look at why. I was expecting it to say failed. If I close it and reopen it.
We can fix it to say failed when there's no content, probably.
Yes. Okay.
Let's do that.
I won't test yet. We can test after we've seen the code. So the validator Oh, I should have said the file. So next to all these markdown files in the configuration file, there's a validator.js file. And this is this is a file that exports a JavaScript function in the common JS syntax, and it is given this special helper object that gives you information about the what your user said. It lets you invoke these fail functions and these success functions to tell TwilioQuest if the user passed your test or not. And then beyond that, you can do anything that you want to validate. We have objectives that make network requests to the public GitHub API and validate that you have an appropriate user account. We have objectives in like the Python and PHP missions that call out to Python and PHP files that barely read any JavaScript at all and do all of their logic somewhere else as appropriate for that objective.
And
so
I
these
think
are really
Popularity is currently working on creating a validator.js that's just a wrapper for validating in C#. So whatever your language of choice is, if it's a lot easier for you to validate working in that language, then it's probably possible to just create a very lightweight JavaScript wrapper to call out to that validation in your language of choice.
Yes, 100%. And those are ones that, so like the Python and the PHP ones, those are ones that are not currently open source, but we have every intention of open sourcing that as we get to making them legible. So those will be great reference points for that too.
So a good rule of thumb when you're writing your validation, in addition to validating the answers, it's really helpful for the learners if you fail fast and have super descriptive error messages. In fact, since reading error messages and parsing them and dealing with them is such an important part of being a developer, that's actually how I positioned the objectives throughout the PHP missions, both the ones in the game and the ones that haven't made it into the game yet, to where basically you can't necessarily complete a mission without failing it first so that you can get the information within the error message. Now, I'm not saying that you need to write your objectives like that. I'm a weirdo. It's fine. But it is super important that no matter what the validation that you're doing, in order to help the learner on their journey, you need to fail as quickly as possible and give them as much information as possible about their failure in like a very like tight step-by-step kind of way.
Yeah, and so part of that reason we mentioned this to-do list earlier on is that, I mean, I imagine most of programmers have this experience too, right? You look at the highest level points of to-do and then you try it. And then, so what we find is that the failure text is actually one of the most read pieces of text that you can have. So if you're looking to like decide where to spend the most time working on text, it's actually the error messages. It's not all of these other spaces, because that's where you're going to get the most people reading the content that you're writing. Yes, those are incredibly important skills.
Not to say that the help isn't really important. It's just a matter of who happens to be approaching it. Because we're wanting to make this stuff useful no matter what your background experience is, people that have been developers for like a few years, they are very unlikely to start with a help file. They are very likely to just glance at the checklist and like fire off some guess at the answer and then like read the error message. And so that's the communication that you were having with them. Whereas we also have people like in boot camps who are approaching this stuff for the first time. We also have like, I've seen like 9 and 10-year-olds jump into this to learn their coding skills. And for them, you really do want to like start with like the very basic hand holding step-by-step. Have you seen the documentation yet? Probably not. Let me give you useful link stuff in the help file. So it's just about making it accessible regardless of people's starting place.
Right, and but even for those newer developers, I think we've found that error messages that are, but that's a great reminder to write your error messages for humans, not necessarily for senior developers. But those error messages are the best way right now with TwilioQuest to for you to give the player information exactly at the time they need it. Because with the help section, like what we've seen with other playtests is that, oh goodness, when you have this giant walkthrough and you have these big guides, it can be hard to know like if I'm partway through like where to go for pertinent information. But if you fail a validation check and you can just give the exact information at the time that it's wanted.
Super helpful.
And so,
in
Valuable.
your step-by-step hand-holdy help file, remember that walls of text are intimidating. So the more you can make things summaries, the more you can make things example code, the more you can make things link out if you don't understand this particular thing, the easier you're going to make it for people to navigate.
Yes. Yeah. 1000%. I don't know why this failed immediately. Let's just, so I think what I want to do real quick is, and this is going to be unfortunately incredibly tiny, but I'm just going to try. Oh, I'm in the production mode, so I need to toggle developer tools here, and I'm going to do something tiny that's going to be really hard for everyone to see, and I'm sorry. Okay. And so the reason this failed is because this extension actually uses Lambda.js as an example of like, hey, you can use any dependencies that you want. However, if you forget that that is a thing, then you will not have it installed.
So if we had followed like the step-by-step instructions in the documentation, would that have led us to go ahead and install this?
Yeah, I think so. I think that was in there. Let's see if that works now. Okay, yeah, we fail as expected. So while you're doing development, that can be nice. One thing that we do recommend if you're going to distribute the extension is to pre-install those sorts of things. It can be tricky if they are system dependent, so you might end up in a situation where if you are using some sort of advanced like operating system dependent way, but pre-installing Node modules for someone using your extension is a great idea because
or alternately, you can make that a mission in and of itself. It depends on what you are attempting to teach, what level you're like aiming at. But like for the levels that I have written, anytime it relies on something, I just make I make an objective that is installing that thing. So
honestly, that's a great idea.
either take care of it yourself invisibly under the hood, or go ahead and make that a separate objective all on its own. And
yeah, that's
for it.
That's a great pitch. Yeah, actually, that would work super well too. Yeah, so that's why it was failing. I had a node dependency that wasn't installed.
So currently the two answers that this sample mission is looking for is it's looking for a word and it's looking for a number because it's taking two. Yes. And you can just take one answer. You can take 5 answers. I don't think there's a limit to the number of answers that you can require on any.
You can take 0.
Right, yeah, you can just have it like be a reading mission, like acknowledge that you can press a button.
And we also have missions too that are like at the beginning of a mission, you would say like, give us the link to a folder where you want to write a bunch of files for code. And then we say, create a file with this name. And then we never need to ask for input again. And we check that directory. So there's lots of different ways you can approach this piece.
Yeah, because it can be validating not something that you're inputting, but something that you have done on your machine. And that is actually why it was super important for us to make this like an app that you install on your computer rather than just be like a website or something. Because in order to validate that you are doing developer-y things on your system, we need to be able to access your system.
Exactly. You did it. So I'm just going to make a validator real quick. So we use this helper function. We call the success message just to demonstrate that I have totally ignored everything. I will just do this correctly instead. Yay, I did it. Ignore the previous thing. But so there's objective completed. I earned this amount of XP, the message that we set.
The way that you create this experience that you are seeing on the screen is the XP that this assigns. It was in that level.json. Am I remembering that correctly? That's where we assigned the experience points?
Objective.json. Oh, but yeah, similar config file. Yeah. Very similar config file.
And then, so that's where we gave the experience points. And then the green success happy is what you get because you have called out the success helper.
Yes, right here.
So those two things combine to create that little happy experience.
Yes. Yes.
I suspect that this does not exist yet, but in the long term, we will also be able to give loot drops as rewards, correct?
Yeah, so that actually should be supported. Oh, but I have already completed the objective. The reason, so I guess what I can just do is sort of explain that the reason that there are XP rewards is that there are also items rewards, and that can be a list of item names that is not documented externally quite yet, because there's like 100 of them, and we need a way to generate those automatically instead of me manually writing out 100 names, because that'll be out of date quickly. But yeah, you can list an array of different item key rewards in this same space.
But currently, there's no way for you to add a custom item, right?
I think at this moment you have to reference the built-in items. Yeah, I think that's correct.
Fair enough. But that is a thing, and in the long term will be more customizable. So if you have plans that would involve that and you want to know how that's going, or give suggestions on how that should go, be sure to come over to the community forums and let us know. Yeah. I'm totally trying to get people to the community forums. They're brand new. So I'm like, everybody needs to like come on down. Yes.
Yeah. So that's another great.
Okay, do you want to just give like a quick walkthrough of the laser barrier so people can see what I'm talking about, when it drops? Because obviously the treasure chest is one that is not blocking anything, but if you want to do objectives that rely on previous objectives so that you can build learning on top of learning, which is super helpful, then you're going to want to use the laser barriers, and you're going to want to create like paths that you can't get past using the laser barriers. And we've got one set up in the demo. So you want to hop over there and demonstrate.
Yeah, so let me segue that into the next topic area too. Once the objective was completed, you can you notice that the level changed a little bit. The chest is now open. These lights are now blinking. And so one of the more advanced bits of TwilioQuest is that you can script changes into the game that respond to various events in the game. These blinking lights are a custom object. The chest that has a different state is a custom object. And then, as Margaret's saying, this barrier that prevents my movement right now is another type of custom object. So I'm going to briefly talk about how those objects work.
Yes, please.
After we demo the laser barrier, they are sort of the complicated, do pretty much anything you could think of area. And so that's another place that we super encourage come chat in the forums about, because we're happy to help debug that stuff. Because
that's the programmatic handshake between the stuff you're doing in tiled and the stuff that you were doing in like the JSONs and the
JavaScript files. There's a lot of JavaScript files. So I already know the answers to this one because I copied the exact same objective, but I put a 2 at the end. And so we'll see once I hack this all looks the same because again I copy pasted it.
Change.
But when I click done, we will notice the laser barrier goes away in the top right corner here.
And you get a little check on the terminal screen.
Again, yeah. So that's again like another instance of the world changes in response to player interaction, which is an important thing. I can now move freely through this space. Like Margaret was saying, it's a great way to gate required pieces of content. So if something further along in your mission requires something else in the past, it's a great way to do it.
Do you have another map connected past this door? Because that is another thing that you can do when you're designing your level, is you can actually make multiple tiled maps that connect to each other, so that if you want to have not just state transitions within a single map, you can actually have journeys between multiple maps.
We do not. This links back to the fog owl, I think, because we wanted to keep the example.
It links. I mean, it does link to another area.
Yeah. So if we, and again, it's tiled is minuscule, but there is a special, in the same way that like we have linked objectives, and I think this is stuff that is best shown in the. We actually will have a map editing guide that Kevin is currently authoring, like this week. Yes, like actively authoring, and that will have a lot of these. Actual images of the UI and like close-ups on these particular pieces of information, just because there's so many different panes. It can be a little hard to demo it well on stream, but there's points here that basically just say map name, and then you just when you walk into it as a player, you go to a new map name. So you can have as many files in this maps directory as you want. And that's actually a great way.
Be sure to give them descriptive names.
Yes, yeah. So default JSON is the first one that you'll load into, but beyond that, give them all kinds of useful context. We find it's helpful to you can kind of think of like a screen as a little bit of like a lesson segment almost. So like there might be a few pieces of core information and then like maybe a little bit of a tangent in one nice concise room, and then the player moves on to the next room and there's like another chunk of the lesson. And so we find that that's kind of helpful for pacing. Versus
it's also these are also ways that you can give your players visceral rewards. Obviously, like XP is like the default visceral reward that people get for completing these objectives, but also you get a little burst of happy when you complete something and the map changes, and you also get a little burst of happy when you've like unlocked a new level and you get to check out a new map. So it's really great to give little rewards like that, gameplay rewards like that, rather than having all of the work be on the same pane with minimal visual changes. It's fun to give the player a journey.
Yeah, that's a great call out too, right? Because exploration is basically the core joy that we offer gameplay wise in TwilioQuest. And the story, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, in my opinion, anyway, the exploring the narrative is pretty comparable experience, right? So there's lots of interesting people to meet along the way. There's new maps to unlock, and that's why we like stuff like the lights flicker on now that you've completed a chest. You go to a new cool looking area, and it lets you really structure those reveals in a fun way.
Is there anything else you want to talk about with the cool custom objecty things, or shall I start bugging you about dialogue?
So I actually have on my list to head into conversations as another type of special object before I look at the config files, because I think conversations are probably more important to cover now than the special scripting stuff. And I don't think it looks like we're probably going to get to the scripting stuff. So I would again say forums for the scripting stuff. There are docs on there are guides and APIs on the docs there. Now is where I see if the conversations are in this build that is public or if they are to be released. And so we're going to find out because I haven't updated. My other task that I'm going onto after I finish writing another guide is to add an example conversation to this cloned repository, and I haven't done that yet. So we will see what happens if I try to do that. So I think what I will do first is I'm going to open, because I do have the original, I have the Fog Owl on my computer. I'm going to open up the Fog Owl and copy Cedric out of there as an example so that I can just see if this works at all before I try to invest too much time in making it from memory.
So again, in the upper right of the tiled is where the layers are. And do we need to put the person that we're going to interact with on a specific layer?
Yeah, so TwilioQuest has all of these different layers. So like here's a base layer, here's a decoration layer, and these are kind of just help you visually organize things and kind of explain how different things interact. There's a hidden layer that this purple stuff says like, hey, player, you can't walk here. And so there's also this special objects layer that contains all of the interesting sort of interactable stuff. And we will be placing the NPC on this layer. So I'm just going to place this Cedric thing that I copy pasted from the Fog Owl and just see what happens when I reload and see if it loads Cedric in or not, because I don't know if it will. Oh, good. Okay, there's Cedric. Great. Okay, so I'm not going to talk to Cedric because I think that he will explode because I didn't copy his conversation files over. And so that's an important thing too, though, to talk about. Like non-player characters are two main components, right? There's this nice visual sprite sheet of like a person hanging out, but then there's also a separate way that we need to talk about the conversation that we go through when we talk to them. So I'm going to let me just see if I can copy the conversation file. I don't really know what's going to happen if I just blindly.
So what is that conversation file? Where do we look for that?
Yeah. So again, once I finish what I'm doing, the rest of the week.
When you put the sample conversation in, where will that be?
Yes. Yeah. So I was gonna see if I could copy it, but let me just start with the folder. So again, we come back to this hierarchy of you have a level, it has maps, it has objectives, and it now will also have conversations. What I'm trying to do, but is not cooperating. Oh, I think it's Command Shift N. That's how I open a new window. I was trying to. I'm going to open the place I copied from just a second ago, where I copied Cedric from. I'm going to open the example conversation.
But very soon, this will just exist in the default, the template that you will be using. There will be a conversation directory, and there will be a default conversation for you to start working with.
Yes. Very true.
And yes, you can totally have a custom conversation where Cedric tells the player they have to watch the TwilioQuest stream. Yes, you can totally let me know.
And it can even tell you to,
so I can look at it and get a giggle.
Can even tell you to check out the forums too. So I have copied this file here that I'm going to gloss over for now in just make it work first.
So you'll notice that the objects on your object layer that are points are actually people. So one of the two points that you're seeing is where your player will enter, and the other one is where you have placed your new NPC. So those don't look like what they will look like on the map. But that's how you know that those are actually characters. So the point by the door is the entrance point for the player, and the point next to that is the Cedric that we have just added.
Yes, and I believe I just haven't worked out the details, so I don't want to do the demo on stream right now, but you should be able to load in the same way we have these special chests that you can place into the world, which I forgot to demo. We have these special objects that you can pull from this tile sheet and place into the world. We will have NPCs that you can do the same way, and then you will actually be able to visually parse the NPC that you want to. But that isn't, I don't have that documented yet, so I have copied the point way that is confusing for now. But we should be able to talk to Cedric now. Okay, so I do need to reload TwilioQuest. I wasn't sure. We haven't had to reload TwilioQuest in a while. It was pretty good. Yeah, we'll get some voice lines in for Cedric. I will not do that quite yet because we use an API product. Oh, good. So it is just blowing up separately. And again, we're going to do some live debugging, and I have linked. I hit the wrong dropdown. I opened our help site, and what I meant to do was. There is no file called cedric.pug. So let's see what I typoed, probably. Conversations. I know this is very interesting. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, it is a good moment to call out that this game is actually developed secretly with web developer tools. And that is absolutely intentional because we and the people that we are attempting to serve with this are web developers. So we made the game development accessible to web developers by using a secretly web developer platform. So when you're debugging, you will be looking at the same developer tools that you would be looking at if you were developing a web app.
Yes.
Which is nice.
Yes. So what I figured out is that we need to deploy the conversations work because we just finished that last week, I think, and I think we just haven't deployed because we haven't documented yet. So this will be deployed this week alongside with the documentation for conversations, and it will work how I have described it here. But to demo a conversation, I will instead talk to Cedric in the nope, I'm not in dev. Yes, in the Fog Owl, thank you. I went already to my terminal to start up the dev build, and there I clicked on the production build. Sorry, debugging really removes a lot of.
I absolutely have been bullying Ryan to get custom conversations in, and now I am bullying Ryan to demo conversations before they are fully in because I am so excited by custom conversations. Probably unsurprising. Basically, custom conversations are how I started my journey as a game developer because when I was learning Visual Basic and completed all of the coursework, and the teacher was learning as she went too, so she was just like, "All right, I guess it's just free for all. do whatever you want. I made a choose your own adventure game, which is basically just custom conversations. It's just here are some words. You get to pick from a list of how to reply to those words, and based on what you pick, you get different words. And for me, it was just a great way to tell a bunch of Monty Python jokes. And it can be whatever you want it to be, which I find just delightful, because making computers talk to you was one of my first priorities when I finally got to like touch them as a kid in the 80s, for whom they mostly existed in Star Trek for many years.
In the last bit of time here, I'm just going to take us through a little bit of the Fog Owl conversation. So like Margaret was saying, we have an NPC that I'm conversing with, Cedric. Cedric's got a name here. Cedric is saying some statement to me. If we were sharing audio, you would hear Cedric's voiceover. And then I can choose options to continue the conversation, and we kind of go down this branching tree structure of conversation. So Cedric tells me something, I respond. And then the final bit is there's this end conversation button that brings me back out to the Fog Owl. And this is one place where I think that this particular diagram is maybe minuscule, but these are a conversation is broken into all of these various parts, and then the conversation screen itself it's an XML document. So it's a lot like HTML. So this is every one of these things is its own XML tag. And so to create a conversation, it would look, if I jump into but the menu has gotten all hamburgery on me. If I look at a demo conversation here, you will see that a conversation cannot fit on my zoomed in screen. Oh, but now it's,
yeah, I mean, I can see it.
Okay. Yeah, I was hoping that it was small enough that you could see the whole conversation. But anyway, it's fine. So we have this root conversation tag, which maps to that conversation picture before. We have a statement tag. We have a responses tag that can hold any number of response components. And then we have a statements tag that defines the contents of that statement. And so all of these bits together correspond to that visual screen that we see when we talk to Cedric. And that's what this particular piece is. It's very similar to rendering an HTML page.
Can we take a look at the code that's making this particular conversation, since it's got multiple branching points? I know we have like 2 minutes left. Maybe you can like speed throw it up on the screen.
I will instead counter with here is an example in the docs, because I don't want to spend the 2 minutes it would take me to find that one. And so that's where I say, this is the HTML version. We use something called Pug, which is a dynamic HTML rendering thing, and that's because our structure matches HTML so closely. Pug provides a way to dynamically render those documents. So here is a static version of this above here. Pug kind of turns tags into this sort of nesting structure, and I'm going quick. And so what Pug then goes on to do is adds statements like a switch case. So when the player's last response was nice to meet, I will render statement final. When the player last said, "Who are you?" I can render a different statement with different lists of responses. And so this is sort of the pattern that you'll go through when you write a custom conversation with branches, is that I can say basically, when the player has said this, create this statement and these responses. And that's the highest quick level overview of how to do a dynamic conversation. It's on the docs. Come ask more questions in the forums.
Yes, we are so looking forward to like finding out what you're going to dig into, and we don't expect you to do this entirely on your own. That's what the community forums are all about. So we can help you, and you can help each other, and we can create a TwilioQuest that serves a whole lot more people, teaching a whole lot more things than we could do just with our tiny team all by ourselves. So thank you so much for joining us today. I hope that you have been inspired to create amazing new educational content. We definitely want to help you actualize your plans. So be sure to join the conversation in the forums. We are also still over at Discord, but Discord's been around. The forums are new, so I'm all about get over to the forums. There is an introduction thread. Be sure to jump in there and introduce yourself. And there's an entire section in the forums just for authoring content that I hope you will check out. And be sure to join us again here on Tuesday at 9 a.m. every single week for awesome TwilioQuest content. And that's it from us. Thanks so much for joining.